Yeah. Analytics off the chain, other channels not the same. Jake and Kyle, you know the name. Headliner Nation, we running the game. I'm a headliner.
Yo, what is going on, Headliner Nation? Welcome back into the Fantasy Headliners. It's a beautiful Monday morning here, but we need to get ready to hit the waiver wire hard this week. Week 9 was kind of brutal. There was a lot of single performances that were just bad, but a lot of team performances that were awful as well. I think there's a lot of people out there looking at Week 9 just wanting it to be over already. And depending on when you're watching this video, it may or may not be because we drop it on Monday mornings. But we're going to talk about, is there anybody out there this week that we need to be running to the waiver wire and grabbing? Well, we've got a few names that you might want to take a shot at this week. We got 4 more teams on a bye in Week 10. Players still dealing with injuries, and of course, some ineffective performances that may or may not be hampering your fantasy teams. Before we talk about all that, though, we got to jump into the segment that we love to call They Said What? And talk about some of the best comments from our Week 9 videos. My man Mitchell, insert Terrell Owens crying gif. That's my Headliner Nation. Oh man, Mitchell. This was a funny one. It came after our Sunday morning live show where we added 50 new members and got to over 600 total here on the channel. I did a little thank you post to everyone, and Mitchell responded with that. Absolutely loved it. Eric Haberin. Wait, what? You want to hit my member? Too far, Kyle. Too far. I don't know what I said, but I think Headliner Nation pretty well knows at this point that sometimes I'll jumble some words together and say some things I don't actually mean. Did I say, Eric, I wanted to hit your member? I don't know what I said at this point, but it wouldn't surprise me if I said something dirty. Caesar, need that ball to throw over the wall of my backyard. Go Cowboys, Caesar. Listen. When talking about the Jalen Hurts autographed football, Caesar doesn't let some autographed memorabilia get in the way of his fandom. He'll toss that ball over the wall in support of his Cowboys. And they probably need all the support they can get after that Sunday performance. Lixify said, why do you look like Adam Thielen on one of my videos this week? I don't think I look like Adam Thielen. I've never heard that one before. I have heard Ben Roethlisberger. I have heard Jeff Saturday. And I've heard Aaron Rodgers. Those are the 3 that I've heard as far as football players go. I've never heard Adam Thielen before, and I don't necessarily think it's accurate. But hey, to each their own. I could look like somebody a whole lot worse than Adam Thielen. And Ariel says, how did you know I was eating McDonald's? Ariel, I just knew. I just knew you were eating McDonald's because I said in one of our videos, if we can get to over 600 members this week, that would be awesome. It's $4.99 a month, and all you got to do is eat at McDonald's one less time a month. Well, Ariel just happened to be eating at McDonald's when I posted that. All right, enough of the comments, though. We got to talk about some specific players. Don't forget, our Monday waiver wire videos are always brought to you by our friends over at Fantrax, one of the most customizable fantasy platforms in the industry today. And we are going to kick it off at the running back position first and talk about some ball carriers that you might want to be bringing along with you on the ride to the end of the season. Devontae Freeman, Le'Veon Bell, both from Baltimore, are going to come up here first. Both of them very low percentage owned, and they're going up against Miami next week. Latavius Murray banged up right now. No idea when he will be back. But the good thing about Devontae Freeman is he played the most snaps by a Baltimore running back this season. Now, yes, they were down to basically Freeman and Bell, and Tyson Williams was there. He didn't get any touches whatsoever. So Murray could still end up being back. Now, Freeman did run for 79 yards on the ground this past week. He did score a touchdown as well. And for Le'Veon Bell, ran for 48 yards, and he also scored a touchdown. So this is a split backfield basically right now with these 2 guys. Now, if I had to pick one guy to pick up, it would be Freeman this week. Again, Murray could end up being back, but I think at this point, Freeman has earned himself the touches. He's playing well. Williams, we're seeing, is not getting any touches. Le'Veon Bell is going to go back to being the number 3 back. Who knows? Maybe when Murray gets back, he loses some touches to Freeman. I think Freeman is going to be the lead back in Baltimore for the remainder of the season if he stays healthy. Ramondre Stevenson peeking up on the waiver wire video again, 6.1% owned. They get Cleveland this week. Runs for 62 yards on 10 attempts on the ground, and then also catches 2 of his targets, or catches his only 2 targets for 44 yards through the air. Mostly a lot of touches when they were up big, but him and Harris both left with head injury. So it's something to monitor throughout the week. Keep an eye on that. Ramondre Stevenson really inserting himself as that number 2 back on this team, which is great to see. We loved Ramondre Stevenson pre-draft. Carlos Hyde from Jacksonville. They get Indianapolis this week. He's not going to be the best play in any given week, but when will James Robinson be back? That's kind of the question mark there, and why we've got Carlos Hyde listed. David Johnson from Philip Lindsay from Houston. I mean, take a shot in the dark on these two. They're heading into the bye, so neither of them are going to be picked up this week. David Johnson, who was not even heard from a week ago, and it was Rex Burkhead. All of a sudden, Rex Burkhead is not heard from today, and it's David Johnson. So I don't know what Houston's doing. It's kind of a cluster there. If you're looking for a shot in the dark play, dealing with injuries, whatever it may be, you could roll with one of these guys. Personally, I'm just staying away from both of them. Mark Ingram from New Orleans, he's definitely a guy that I want to pick up this week. Now, we told everybody this week it could be a really good week for Mark Ingram. And overall, he just didn't perform that bad. I mean, he had 43 yards on 9 carries, and he had 5 targets in the passing game, and he caught all 5 of them. But here's the issue. I don't think anyone, including ourselves, expected New Orleans to be down to Atlanta basically the entire game. It's why Mark Ingram didn't get more touches and more opportunities. So was this week great for Mark Ingram? No, it wasn't great for Mark Ingram, but it could be a lot better for Mark Ingram moving forward. He is definitely a guy who is a priority for me to add on the waiver wires right now. He's only 23% owned across the board. I really like Mark Ingram going forward this season. Jordan Howard from Philadelphia, 8.1% owned. They're going to get Denver this week. He led the team with 17 carries in a losing effort. So it wasn't really like, oh, Philadelphia was up big the entire game like they were 2 weeks ago against Detroit. And that's why, no, he got 17 carries even in a losing effort. So touchdowns in back-to-back weeks. Still, we're going one more week with no Miles Sanders. And who knows? Maybe it could be a little bit more than that as well. Who knows? Maybe Miles Sanders doesn't make it back right away. The remaining schedule for Philadelphia is good the rest of the season. And Jordan Howard is an emergency stash, RB4 type of guy. You could do a lot worse. Alex Collins all of a sudden is under 36% owned. And I understand going into the bye, he was banged up. I mean, he was questionable in their last matchup. But 36% owned for a guy who's the lead back? I want Alex Collins. Like, grab him. Grab him. Like I said, he was banged up heading into the bye, but now he's had a week. They were off last week, so he might be off a lot of people's radars. He's had a week to get healthy, and he's the lead back. And they're going up against Green Bay, who may or may not have Aaron Rodgers for a second straight week. Eno Benjamin from Arizona, 0.1% owned, tossing this one at the end because Chase Edmonds left the field injured. Haven't seen a whole lot of an update about him yet. Benjamin did have 39 yards on 9 rushing attempts with a touchdown after Chase Edmonds came off the field. So keep an eye on it, because if Chase Edmonds has to miss any time, Eno Benjamin slots in as the number 2 back on this team. Now we got to move on to the wide receiver position, and a guy that I've been talking about for several weeks. Donovan Peoples-Jones at 4.6% owned, going up against New England. Didn't expect much of him out of this past week if you watch the start and sit video, but that was because Odell Beckham Jr. was still on the team, and that has changed. Now, weeks 5 through 6. So this wasn't just a one-time performance. This past week, he did have 2 catches on 3 targets for 86 yards and a touchdown. But if you remember back to weeks 5 and 6 before he got injured, in those 2 weeks, he had 11 targets, 9 receptions, 171 yards, and 2 touchdowns. So it was starting to heat up even before he got injured. Gets hurt, comes back. Now no Odell Beckham Jr., Now, yes, this is a guy who the rest of the season could just have a fantastic rest of the season. What is one of the reasons why? Well, one of the reasons why is because if you look at it this past week, they were up big and they ran the ball an awful lot. So there wasn't a need for more passing attempts, right? But wait until we get into more weeks, aka this week maybe against New England, where they are throwing the ball a lot more, and Donovan Peoples-Jones is going back to seeing 5-6 targets a game with his big play ability. He's a guy that could be at least a wide receiver 3 startable player the rest of the season. Elijah Moore and Jamison Crowder, both from the New York Jets. Jamison Crowder coming in at 33. Elijah Moore coming in at 15% owned. They're going to get Buffalo this week. Don't love the matchup this week, obviously, going up against Buffalo. Crowder does have 21 targets the last 2 weeks. Elijah Moore last week had 8 targets, caught 7 of them for 84 yards and 2 touchdowns. Who's going to be the starting quarterback at this point, though? When is Wilson going to be back? Is White going to be healthy this week? Is it going to be Johnson again? So in this matchup against Buffalo, not expecting either of these guys this week, but wanted to put them on there for the stretch run. Rashad Bateman still only 24% owned, going up against Miami this week. Had 8 targets this past week, caught 5 of them for 52 yards. He's had 20 targets total the last 3 weeks. He's starting to get a little bit stronger and a little bit stronger. Could be, again, a good flex option, wide receiver 3 guy. He's not taking over the wide receiver 1 position. That's Marquise Brown. I don't think I should have to say it anymore because I think the performances are basically speaking for themselves. But Bateman is still a guy that could be a good option the rest of the way. Tim Patrick from Denver at 24% owned. They get Philly. And even with Judy back this past week, he's still producing. And it may be time to realize that maybe Noah Fant, the performance that we've seen from him is where he's basically going to stay. Some decent performances, but mostly down. And Tim Patrick is going to become the number 3 target on this team. Now, Courtland Sutton did have a tougher matchup this past week, and maybe that was part of the reason why Tim Patrick saw a better performance. But also this past week, Tim Patrick ran more routes than Jerry Jeudy and only had 1 less route than Courtland Sutton. I think we got to take notice of that. Nico Collins from Houston at 1.6% owned. They're going into the bye, so really no need to add him this week, but keeping an eye on it. They'll have another week of the bye for practice for Tyrod to get back, and then when Ty God, is feeling it and feeling better, then maybe Nico Collins starts seeing a little bit better run. From Atlanta, Russell Gage and Olamide Zaccheaus, 16% owned for Gage. Zaccheaus at 3% owned, going up against Dallas this coming week. Russell Gage, I was worried about the performance this past week, but I still had him as a guy that you wanted to add for the long-term run from the waiver wire. He's the number 1 on the team. He is. And he had a better performance this week than what I was still anticipating. Caught 7 of his 8 targets for 64 yards, which was good. Still widely available in a lot of leagues at 16%. He's definitely a guy. Right now, he's behind Donovan Peoples-Jones for me in terms of guys I want to pick up. If you want to play it safer and you're worried about it, then grab Russell Gage instead. But he's that number 2 behind DPJ for me for wide receivers. For Zaccheaus, I'm not going to add him this week. I want to put him on here because he's coming off a big performance, and I figured some of you would ask about him. Only 0.3% owned, but I mean, he's the number 3 target on this team. Less routes overall, less snaps overall than both Sharp and Gage. Hurst was right there with him. Pitts had more than he did. Cordero Patterson is... So there's not enough room for Zaccheaus to perform like that on a weekly basis. He just had one of those weeks, and I wanted to make sure that I mentioned it. I'm personally not going to be adding him unless it's a super deep league or I'm in a lot of trouble. But if you're adding Zaccheaus because you're in a lot of trouble, your season may overall be done at this point. Deshaun Jackson, no confirmation. It's not official as of yet, but it sounds like Deshaun Jackson is headed to the Las Vegas Raiders. They're going to get KC this week. I like his potential in this offense. Nobody fits that deep threat role the way Deshaun Jackson does. And with Hunter Renfrow, Darren Waller creating a lot of chaos closer to the line of scrimmage, it's going to open up some opportunities for Deshaun Jackson down the field. Am I starting him right away? Maybe not starting him right away, but I definitely think we could at some point this season. From Green Bay, MVS and Allen Lazard, both of them coming in under 10% owned. Now, MVS and Allen, I mean, listen, this past week without Aaron Rodgers was awful, right? And there's no guarantee that he will be back for Sunday. He's going to have some positive tests. He's going to have to be, or some negative tests. He's going to have to be asymptomatic. There's no guarantee that he will be allowed to return this week. So we have to keep an eye on that. However, I'm listing both of these guys because after the injury to Robert Tonyan at the tight end position, the Green Bay Packers have chosen to run more 4 wide receiver sets. So you're going to have MVS, Devontae Adams, and Allen Lazard on the field a majority of the time. So these are both guys that could have some weekly fantasy value the rest of the season. And from San Francisco, Brandon Ayuk, under 50% owned now for good reasons. Finally had a good game this week. Biggest game by far on the season. Caught 6 of 8 targets for 89 yards and a touchdown. Debo did get out there, was slowed a little bit, was hampered a little bit because of that injury. Expect him to be getting better and back to full health, but maybe this is a step in the right direction for Brandon Ayuk to get him rolling again. At the tight end position, quite a bit of people at the tight end position this week to talk about. Tyler Conklin at 46% owned. They're going to get the Los Angeles Rams this week. His 7 targets last week was tied for the team league, and he caught 5 of them for 45 yards. But I think some of those old Dalvin Cook targets that they were using are going to start going to Tyler Conklin now. And if you've been around for a while and you've watched these shows, you know that I have been clamoring for them to use the tight end more often in this offense, and they haven't done it. Hopefully they're headed in that direction right now. Over the last 3 weeks, he's caught 13 of 19 targets for 167 yards. And the most important thing is he's playing over 80% of offensive snaps right now. That is great to see for Tyler Conklin. Dan Arnold from Jacksonville, only 16% owned. They're going to go up against Indianapolis this week. He's top 10 in tight end targets since week 5, and he's led Jacksonville in targets in back-to-back weeks. Evan Ingram, why do you keep doing this to me, you SOB? Why do you make me start you for so long, and then you don't, and then you get a touchdown, and Evan Ingram, I'm starting to resent you. They're going into the bye. I'm not really going to add him this week, but I wanted to make mention of it since he has touchdowns in back-to-back weeks now. But, I mean, that's basically it. If it weren't for those touchdowns, I mean, he caught 3 targets this past week for 38 yards and a touchdown, but that touchdown was a 30-yard touchdown. So, I mean, he only had 8 yards on his other 2 catches. So, really, it's been 1 catch the past 2 weeks that has made a difference. Adam Troutman for New Orleans, 1.5% owned. They're going to get Tennessee. He has played at least 86% of their offensive snaps the last 4 games. At the tight end position, the one thing that I love to look at, especially when you're dealing with issues and needing to stream tight ends or picking up tight ends, is how often they're on the field. The more often they're on the field, the more often they could get targets. And at the tight end position, that's what we're looking for, is a chance sometimes. So for me, with Adam Troutman, he's definitely a guy I'm eyeing the rest of the way. Cole Kmet and Pat Freiermuth, I don't have a whole lot to add on them right now because they play on Monday Night Football. This video drops on Monday morning, so we haven't seen their Week 9 performances as of yet. Cole Kmet going into the bye. Pat Freiermuth is going to get Detroit, though, next week. Pat Freiermuth still a guy that is a priority add for me right now. Hayden Hurst from Atlanta, 1% owned. They're going to be going up against Dallas. He played 26 snaps, and he only ran 13 routes. But it's a tough. New Orleans is a tough tight end matchup, so I wasn't expecting anything out of him. But for Dallas, we could potentially go back to using Hayden Hurst against Dallas again. And kind of what we're seeing right now, Atlanta is shifting to more 2 tight end sets, 2 running back sets, only running 2 wide receivers more often. And because of that, we're going to see more Hayden Hurst as the weeks go on. And Logan Thomas from Washington, not official or anything yet, but he could be back very soon. And because of that, he's under 50% owned now, so we need to start adding him back to our rosters now. Okay, time to jump into the streaming portion of our video where we talk about quarterbacks and defensive special teams that we could stream in Week 10. It's kind of thin at both positions in terms of streaming options. Teddy Bridgewater for Denver, only 24% owned. They're going up against Philadelphia. His weapons are super healthy. They're coming off a big-time win in Dallas. He's looking really good right now. This could be a great performance for Teddy Bridgewater. He's kind of my main streaming option this week. Matt Ryan for Atlanta, 44% owned against Dallas. Dallas, again, coming off that awful performance against Denver. Teddy Bridgewater did very, very well. The wide receivers did very well for the most part. Not all of them. But Dallas got rolled by Denver last week. So for Matt Ryan in this offense, can they step in and they kind of continue that trend that we saw with that Dallas defense, where they are a defense that definitely will bend. They don't break all the time, but they do bend quite often. And Ben Roethlisberger from Pittsburgh, I mean, they get Detroit this week. How often are you going to be able to use Ben Roethlisberger this week or this season? Might as well make the most of it this week against Detroit. For defensive special teams, again, not a whole lot of options here this week. Las Vegas going up against Kansas City. Who would have thought that we would be telling you to potentially stream a defense against the Kansas City Chiefs this season? But it's a risk, right? Las Vegas creates lots of pressure. KC has not been playing that well, and we have seen over the last couple of years that Las Vegas plays up to KC, right? Las Vegas will go up against KC toe-to-toe quite a bit. Could that be this week coming up? Maybe. Are you willing to risk Las Vegas? I don't know about that, but there would never be a better time to do it than this week. Tennessee going up against New Orleans. Tennessee is playing really, really well. I mean, they were all over the LA Rams. They made Matthew Stafford look very bad this past week. They made the Rams offense look bad this past week. I mean, it would have been a lot worse if it wasn't for a last-second touchdown to Sony Michel. So them going up against New Orleans with no clear-cut quarterback right now. Will it be Taysom Hill? Will it be Trevor Siemian? I like Tennessee as my number one streaming option this week. And Seattle going up against Green Bay. This is going to depend on if Aaron Rodgers is back. If Aaron Rodgers is back, this is a no for me. If he's not, if he misses a second straight week, then I think we can stream Seattle against Green Bay and get away with it. Now, our players to drop segment. 3 guys that are back on this list from last week: Tyler Higbee, Robbie Anderson, Laviska Shenault. Tyler Higbee, I know he had an okay game and saw a decent amount of targets this past week, but still isn't doing anything. Yeah, he almost scored a touchdown, but the dude stepped out of bounds, so it doesn't count. So Tyler Higbee still overall in the season not doing anything. Robbie Anderson, Laviska Shenault, obviously those have been a disaster to watch so far. Jared Cook from the Chargers at 69% owned. This past week was supposed to be a great matchup for him, and it didn't turn into that. He had fewer snaps than Steven Anderson, and he only played one more snap than Donald Parham, and the touchdowns went to the other 2 guys. We are seeing more of a 3-way split between these 3 tight ends. Jared Cook is not playing nearly as much as he was before. Chuba Hubbard from Carolina still just about 75% owned. With CMC back, Chuba Hubbard offers you no value. We saw that this past week. And if you are a CMC owner, then yeah, hold on to Chuba Hubbard. If you're not, then basically at this point, you can drop him, use the spot on somebody else, try to maybe trade him to the CMC owner for a little something. Who knows? But if you don't own CMC, there's no need to own Hubbard. For Zach Moss, again, Buffalo, I mean, he's only getting meaningful touches if this team is up by a whole lot. If you look at his 2 best performances of the season, it was a 44-point blowout one week and another week where they were up by 20-plus points. That's the only time that he's getting touches. Outside of that, he hasn't scored a touchdown, and he hasn't ran for 40 yards since week 4. He had a head injury this past week. Is that going to affect him next week? And Devin Singletary is still getting the majority of the touches right now. Zach Moss is 82% owned. Devin Singletary is like 42% owned. Devin Singletary should be owned over Zach Moss. And if Zach Moss misses this coming week due to concussion protocol, Devin Singletary is going to be a guy that we're going to play this week. Jacoby Myers for New England at 71% owned. He now has set a record for the most receiving yards without a touchdown in their NFL career. He has the most receiving yards in NFL history without having a touchdown. It's becoming funny at this point how Jacoby Myers cannot find the end zone. Has never scored a touchdown. Can we get this man a touchdown, please? Oh, my God. Without the touchdowns, it's no use starting Jacoby Myers right now. And then Michael Thomas for New Orleans. I mean, more than likely missing the rest of the year. 45% owned. Go ahead and drop them off your roster. Probably shouldn't have even owned them anyway. But, Headliner Nation, there you go. My top waiver wire ads for Week 10 of the NFL season. Hit the like button for me. Become a subscriber here of the Fantasy Headliners by hitting that subscribe button down below. Come on, become a member of Headliner Nation today. Don't miss out on it. And leave me a comment down below. Who are you looking to add this week? Who is your top waiver wire priority? Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to get out of here, though. All of you stay safe and healthy, and I will catch you on the next episode of the Fantasy Headliners.